Welcome, everyone, to Love Secrets Revealed. I am your host, Ryan Matsumori, and I'm a professional men's coach supporting men to move from their head to their heart so that they can more deeply connect with themselves and know themselves and feel themselves so they can intrinsically better connect with their woman and the children in their life. And I really invite you to settle in and get comfortable and become present because we have so much juicy goodness for you today with an amazing speaker gifting her time for you in your growth and your connection and your love in your relationships. And it's a juicy, amazing topic because our speaker is a clinical sexologist. And so it's such a pleasure to have her here, and I'm going to bring her up right now so you can get to meet her and hear from her. Dr. Patty Britton, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. This is such an important topic.
It is. It is so crucial, and we're going to get into all the juicy goody bits. And before we do, I just want to introduce our viewers to you and learn more a bit about you. And so what I'll share, and I shared a bit before, Dr. Patty Britton is a clinical sexologist and a sexual educator and is known as the mother of sex coaching. She has top-level credentials in this area and is a world leader in this space. She's written 5 books. She's a public speaker, and she has over 40 streaming DVDs for couples around sexual enhancement. She is a frequent guest on national television shows, documentaries, and radio shows, and she serves her clients locally out of LA as well as globally via Zoom. And Dr. Patty is the co-founder of Sex Coach U, which is the world's premier credentialing and training program for sex coaching. And she believes that women and men have a divine birthright to experience their sexual power, eroticism, and ultimate pleasure. So Dr. Patty, thank you again. Is there anything else that you would love the viewers to know about you or how you serve?
Just that because we're all still facing a global pandemic, most of us don't have the luxury of being in person. And I actually miss that. Once a year, I have led an in-person experiential deep dive into healing the sexual self retreat. And unfortunately, I just had to cancel 2022 June's event, but we're looking toward perhaps having that in the fall. And my international training hub is actually in and around Warsaw, Poland. That's where I do all of my international trainings, which is just an extraordinary culture and just a rich environment for healing and growth and fun. Fun should be part of the equation of healing.
Yeah. And Dr. Patty, this is such a sensitive topic in relationship, sex. Sex is when we're the most vulnerable, when we're the most intimate. And a lot of times, the first place where a relationship will break down because of that sensitivity. And then it kind of spirals from there. And so what I'd love to hear more about is what are some of your top tips or what you wish men and women would know to really help themselves experience their full potential as lovers?
Well, if we had about 6 hours, I could start to deconstruct that because this is my life's work, answering that very question. And I think that one of the things that you said, I'm going to actually pick apart a little bit and say that as a sexologist, I'm about sexual wellness, sexual health, and sexual rights or freedom. And I want to be a voice that sex for sex sake, for pleasure, for connection, making different meanings out of a sexual experience is perfectly okay. Sometimes when I think of intimacy, I actually don't think about sexuality. I think about emotional vulnerability and closeness. That's that opening of the heart. And so I want to speak to the need that we have. I believe that as we're animals, we're creatures, we're intrinsically wired, most of us, that we really do feel the need to express that core energy, which is often the life force energy known as our sexual energy, sometimes our erotic energy. And it pushes us toward connection, but it also pushes us toward the expression of that energy alone and or with a partner. So when I hear about that vulnerability that you speak about, yes, especially for men, and I'm speaking about penis owners, speaking about men who identify as men, because we live in a world right now where diversity and inclusivity and all kinds of identities and gender norms exist. We need to know about that. But for cisgendered, heterosexually identified men, it can be scary to be sexual with a partner. And I'm going to be talking heteronormative, meaning men and women together in the sexual context. And what happens is there is, for men are biologically so different from women anatomically. Like I feel I have so much compassion for men who are my clients because men are so vulnerable by definition. Either you get an erection or you don't get an erection. It's right there. You can't hide that. And the same thing may be true for orgasm or the completion of a sexual act. But what we know is that by definition as well, when we experience orgasm, we also emit oxytocin, which also gets emitted at other times in our touching and certainly in the maternal infant bond during breastfeeding. But that's the hormone, that's called the cuddle hormone. That's the hormone that allows us to want or feel the urge to merge, that nurturing, that need to be close and connect, which often is what I'm going to tell you guys. That's often what women are longing for at the conclusion of a sexual experience, is to be held, is to feel close. That's where that intimacy comes in, that feeling of I'm known, I'm seen, I'm felt. And that's where the opportunity really is to merge. That's the beautiful part that I see in couple sex. Does that help?
That's beautiful. And what I'd like to add in there and to hear your thoughts on is from my experience and the work that I do with men and what I see around the world. Yes, there's that primal animal side to us as human beings, man, woman, or whatever else you identify as. And what we deeply, deeply crave at our innermost core is that intimacy that you talk about. And a lot of people assign sexuality to intimacy. They kind of merge them. And like you pointed out, no, they do not need to be one and the same. And what I found is men deeply desire so much deeply connected intimacy, being known, being seen, being appreciated, feeling that connection. But we don't yet really know how to create it that deeply outside of the bedroom. And so what I found is a lot of times, you hear a common saying of like, oh, men just want to have sex, men just want to F, men just want to this, men just want to that, have that. And we get to come with an awareness that men haven't had the space to be vulnerable like we truly want to be. And so for us, sex is, we're relating sex and intimacy is the same thing. So you think we want sex, deep down when you get to the subconscious, we deeply crave intimacy, and we only know how to create intimacy currently through sex.
So one of my friends is a very well-known author, Dr. Carol Cassell. And a long time ago, she wrote a book. That book was called Swept Away. Go look for it, all of you who are interested in all of this. She did this national survey of boys and girls, which also translates men and women. And what she found, it was so cool when this science came out, is that girls girls need love to give sex, and boys the opposite. And that's really what you're saying in some ways, is that how women tend to open up. And I'm not saying it's all women or all men. And I do think there are cultural shifts that are taking place even globally. I run a global training organization. I have students all around the world, and I know the cultural norms in so many other cultures, not just the United States or North America. And what we know is that for a lot of women, they need to feel loved, appreciated, special, close, like I'm the one, even if it's just for the night or an hour. And men often need to open up sexually in order to feel that love pour through them. And that was her scientific survey. So, I feel so strongly that we're living in such a difficult time for men in particular, because there's such a demonization of men right now, the Me Too movement, the fact that you can't say this or do this. And I have male clients who are like, I don't know how to
Mm.
begin to date. I don't know how to begin to be sexual with a partner, a new partner. And I say, well, you have to find out who you are. You have to show up authentically. And I think that being vulnerable is actually one of the highlights of what a lot of women are looking for
Mhm.
in male partners. It's so interesting. It's like so many women say, I want a sensitive guy, but who's a man's man. Okay. It's a lot of pressure on you guys, because you have to be that man, that masculine energy, and that, that alpha. But at the same time, women really want your heart to open.
Yeah.
And I think we're socialized, and I think this is still true today. We're socializing, it's better today, our boys to don't cry. Go to the athletic playing field and take a punch, but don't cry. Don't say, oh, that hurts me. And girls are expected to be the emotional ones. And I think that emotional intelligence and emotional training is part of what men need to have more role models for. Don't
Mm.
you agree about that in the
I
work that you do?
I completely agree with that 100%. And like everything, there's a full spectrum. And so that
Mhm.
applies as a very clear generality. And I also work with men who more naturally exist on the emotional side and are looking to bring in more of the masculine,
Mhm.
grounded, directed
Mhm.
leadership presence. And then I've
Yes.
worked with women too. And there's a lot, especially in our Western culture, where the value is all about what? Production. So many women to feel powerful, to feel whatever they're deeply desiring inside, get into a very masculine energy and become successful in business, beautiful, and they've lost this femininity aspect to their womanhood that becomes a gap too. And so it's a full spectrum.
I agree. I think that the norm and the push for women to be successful has been to become hard.
Yeah.
And and as a sex doctor, hard hard is a good word for men. Soft is not such a good word. I mean, I do work with a lot of guys who have erectile failure. So I think that there's something about softening. I think that when we soften, we actually allow our heart to open.
Mm.
And we all need to soften. And we're living in such trying, traumatic times right now. As we're talking today and recording this, there's still a global pandemic happening
Mm.
that is allowing us to look within. That's part of the gift, of the pandemic, is this introspective movement that most of us are feeling, but at the same time we're also feeling more isolated and more contracted. So even, my body language is saying contraction. What has to happen is we have to open up to flow, and guess what? That flow has to come from the heart.
Hmm. And just to put on loudspeaker, that's been my journey as a man, and from engineer to coach and what I do now, really that
Yes.
journey from head to full heart, and the beauty that comes from that experience. I did not know the value of feelings and emotions and the power of it and the connection of it and the freedom with it. I was very disconnected years ago
Yeah.
in my life, and I thought that was normal. And I thought, emotions just get in the way of things. What's the point of them? They're
Yeah.
inconvenient. They're chaotic. I can't control it. It's dangerous. And that was
Exactly.
such bullshit. Like, I just didn't know what I didn't know.
That's true. And there's this wonderful book, I'm sure you know it, called Get Shit Done.
Hmm.
And I don't particularly like to say the shit, but it's such a great metaphor for where our society still is and what the push still is, which is productivity, which is not who are you as a sexual being, but you're a sexual doer. And
Mm.
you're you're a doer as a human being. You're really a human doer. And there's just too much emphasis on that. And there needs to be a shift
Mm.
toward more being. And when we think about what allows us to have great sex as couples, what has to happen is it's an interesting conundrum, because we have to get out of being a sexual doer to become a sexual being. In other words, you have to know yourself first. You have to know what your wants are, what your needs are for pleasure and fulfillment sexually with a partner and or alone, but I'm really talking about couples right now. And then you have to have the skills as a lover, which we're never taught. We're taught, don't do this, don't do that. We're not taught how to be a great lover, which is what propels so much of my work, why I make couples enhancement DVDs, why I write books, why I work with my clients, why I train people. But at the same time, we have to get into the being. We have to come home to ourselves and be present and be embodied and be mindful and heart-centered. That's not so easy. Easy to say, not so easy to do or become, right?
Yeah. And for anyone viewing right now that this might feel impossible or like too much work, I heard Dr. Patty say, we have to do this, and you get to, like, this isn't something you have to do. There's no rule.
Yeah.
But you really just get to take an honest look in the mirror at where you're at in your life right now, what's going on, what are your relationships like how fulfilled are you actually, how at peace are you actually, how deeply connected and trustworthy and trusting do you actually feel? And if it's not where you truly want it to be in your heart, there's opportunity here. You get to learn, you get to practice, you get to try new things and go beyond what might be comfortable to create the life and the relationship you really want.
I love that. And I think that we're living in a very challenging era as well, because of exactly the thing that we're doing right now, electronic living, the e-life. We're all living in e-life, just as most of us who are clinicians work with our clients on Zoom, clients around the world and students all around the world. And this is how we meet. We don't meet in person. And what I find with couples is that electronic life steals away from being in the moment and being together. The thing that really gets me angry the most is walking into a restaurant, for example, and yes, there's still restaurants open, and seeing a couple who are a couple with two smartphones at either side of the table on their devices. Sometimes they're texting each other. It's like, people, stop it.
Yeah,
I want to go table to table, put that away. Or book an appointment with me, because you're going to need help if you don't stop that. And I have all my couples do e-fasts. I have them create contracts for their relationship that allow for healthy boundary setting and for what works for the couple and the relationship, as well as for the two individuals, if we're talking about a dyad. And having, things like having the phones off during dinner can change the course of the destiny of a romantic and erotic and or a sexual relationship. Just 1 hour off the damn phone, it can change everything. And that's part of what I think the fear that men tend to have is, I don't want to show my weakness. And I think these devices become armor. They become protective shields for being present and being intimate with each other. We think that if we have 2 million followers on Facebook or another social media, that we have friends. I've got to tell you the truth. Those are not your friends. And so forming real relationships means being real with yourself first. It's always about coming from self. And that's so true when it comes to our sexual experience. But maybe we can talk more about that.
Yeah. And when you're bringing up devices, we are biological chemical beings, and billions of dollars have constantly being invested into being able to hack our human chemical systems to go onto Facebook, to go onto Instagram, to go onto TikTok, to go onto Pornhub, to go onto all kinds of other things. It's calculated. They're hacking us, and we don't even know it's happening because they're hacking our chemical systems. And then we're getting the dopamine hits that we're looking for. We're getting the serotonin and norepinephrine and all the other chemicals that we want through these devices, as opposed to relearning how to get it through each other. And so we get to have grace with ourselves. We get to have compassion with ourselves. We get to realize it's not completely our fault, and at the same time it is, because we're always at choice. And now we just get to be aware of the impact of the choices that we're making, and that your cell phone and your computer is having a big impact on your level of intimacy and your level of sexual connection. And
absolutely.
And something I just want to share here, this is a big thing for women. This is even a bigger thing for men that is killing relationships that I don't see enough people talking about or acknowledging or being authentic and real about, or it's becoming so normalized that people don't even know it's killing relationships. And that is pornography. Pornography is killing men's libido. It's hijacking their ability to connect with their partner, how they receive pleasure, how they give pleasure, where they can, watch pornography and masturbate and ejaculate and get those chemical releases. But then they go with their partner and it's not the same. It's not, you're training your body to be aroused by certain things that aren't real. And so when you're in real life with your partner, those things don't happen physiologically in your body. And it's not only just killing the physical connection, but the emotional connection. And I know you're an expert in this too. So I would love to hear what you might offer in this space.
So it's interesting. The evolution of ubiquitous porn is here. And it's everywhere. It's available on any device. Unfortunately, it's also available for any age who's smart enough to tap. And I'm not against porn. I'm against porn dependency. I'm against using porn in lieu of the human connection. That's what I'm against. And for some people, porn is an additive. It can add to what we see as a pandemic sexually around the world, and particularly in North America and this Western culture, is sexless relationships. Sex has gone off the radar, and there are so many reasons for that. I've written about it and talked about it. And it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be biochemical, but it's often just sort of same stuff, different day, boredom. And that's why dopamine, which is dopamine, norepinephrine, and adrenaline, those are the three brothers or sisters that live in our brain that create desire, lustful desire. And over time in a relationship that wanes, it goes down, and we become more companion-like. This is the work of Helen Fisher. And what happens with porn is exactly what you just said. It's like, boom, 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 the brain lights up. The dopamine receptors are lit up, and all this chemical, we're drunk on our neurochemistry. And that's one piece of it, because that can't happen. That's new variety and surprise stimulation to the brain. Something new is happening, as opposed to looking at our beloved, male, female, or other, and saying, I want you, I love you. And so that's one aspect of it. But the other is, and this is what I find particularly younger men, is that they're not conscious. They're not conscious that this is fantasy. You're not having sex. You're not having a relationship with this person. This is a fantasy object, even if it's a live cam girl or anything that's interactive. It's not real. And you're masturbating. You're not having sex with another person. You're having sex because men, we still have the research to bear this out. Men tend to be more aroused by their eyes. Women tend to be more aroused by what they hear and what they feel. So touch and words seem to activate women more than males. Males tend to be much more dependent on seeing something that they feel is sexy or think is arousing. And I say feel and think interchangeably. So I often have to spend a lot of time with men who are my clients, deconstructing that this is fantasy. And guess the sex you're having is you on you. It's this. That's not partner sex. And you're missing out on this whole universe of joy and pleasure and connection and all of the senses that can get activated, because it's actually lousy sex. That's the other sad part. And then you bring that lousy sex home into the bedroom to your partner, and you don't know why, technicolor orgasms aren't happening in your brain, lightning isn't striking, or you're so overwhelmed because all of your senses are now open. You're smelling, you're tasting, you're touching, you're seeing, you're hearing. It's all happening, and you're flooded, and you kind of don't know what to do with that. And so the other piece of this puzzle is that being with another person is a huge landscape of opportunity for pleasure and for arousal, because men and women need to be, first we have desire. Sometimes we feel it, sometimes we don't. Then we have arousal, that's being turned on, and then the clock is ticking. Now we're in the sexual response cycle where we can move up and up and up toward orgasmic release. And for men, and this is often something shocking for men who live in a male body, guess what? Guys have a two-phased release. First, they have an orgasm, then they ejaculate, and in between is the magic zone where you can actually extend your orgasm for hours and hours and hours. But if you don't know you have two phases and you think ejaculation is your orgasm, you're missing out on a whole world, right? And this is part of the teaching of tantric experts and sexological experts like me, who help men and their partners understand there's a whole new potential out there. And maybe that's part getting back to the vulnerability and the ability to feel, is to be able to take pauses, to be able to know that sex is not some fast escalator from point A to point B. It's not like that. It's a ride. And it's okay to take snack breaks. I once had a client who used to practice tantric sex for hours and hours and hours. He'd say, oh, I get so tired. It's like, well, why don't you take breaks? Oh, well, now we take tea and toast breaks. And just to have permission, that's so much of the work I do, is giving permission. And that's what I'm here to do today as well, to give permission.
And there's such a spectrum of sexual, I don't want to call it maturity, but awareness and capability and skill set, because there's the relationship where it's zero sex and premature ejaculation and non-lubricated natural wetness, and all the way towards men with the ability to do non-ejaculatory orgasms. and to really
Mm-hmm.
play in that space of pleasure for hours with your partner, where it's a space of play and exploration and libido's high, energy's high, connections high for a
Yes.
long time versus I come and I'm done.
Yes.
And there's a full spectrum of where people are at. And so something I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is for the individual who's had the relationship like this, or in the relationship like this, man or woman, that is not having sex and doesn't know how to re-engage in sex with their man or with their woman. What are some recommendations or anything that you can offer in this area?
Well, a couple of things. So, first of all, the way to prime the pump is through solo sex. So if sex is dead, then having sex with yourself, if that's within your value and or religious system, is okay. Then that's the foundation for all shared sexual activity. This is the original work of Alfred Kinsey, for example. And so what we know is that in order to come back into a sexual relationship as a couple, there's usually some healing to do. There's usually some forgiveness, I want to say, and ability to communicate. I have met so many couples who can do it, but they can't talk about it. It's more intimate to talk of sex than it is to put tab A in hole B. Okay?
Yeah.
So get past that. Find your courage. You know, I often say to men, women want you to be the man. They really do. Now it's a big job, okay? Because we're talking about the new male. The new male is sensitive, is in touch with his cognitive function, his emotional function, his physical function. It knows how to be present, knows how to turn the phone off during sex and not listen to the little notifications that might be going off. And women have other responsibilities, but I'm really speaking to the males at this point. And to come back into a sexual relationship, it takes being willing to have the courage to speak your truth. First, you got to know your truth. And this is another kind of a razor's edge that I find with my clients. Often I hear my clients say, I want to tell my partner, I want sex. I want it. And I say, I want you. It's totally different when you tell your partner, I want you, not it. Especially if there's been a rift, especially if there's been a kind of bed death, right? So that willingness to say, I want you, take that risk. It's worth it. And maybe some of what you're going to hear is not now, but there are so many communication techniques that I teach my clients of how to safely enter back into sex. And through touch, you know, touch is really a language of its own. And it can be sensual touching, can be just, you know, holding each other. There's a wonderful tantric technique that I'm not a tantric specialist, but I study lots and lots of things where you hold each other face to face. So you're making like heart to heart contact, or you can sit across from each other with your hand on the heart of the other person, and you hook up left eye to left eye for at least 1 minute, and then you breathe together. For some couples, that is the hardest assignment of their lives. Because guess what happens? Intimacy and connection. And that's what we need in order to be sexual, so that either of us in that partnership isn't feeling like you're using me as your masturbation sleeve. I hear that from my clients sometimes, especially the females of male partners. You know, he's just using me as his masturbation glove. And so we have to shift and really know how to connect one to one and be willing to show up with each other and to respect each other and to not be scared of love. That's really what I want to say. Not be scared of love. Love's the fuel that runs this system called life.
And when you talked about being courageous, and it's more courageous to talk about sex than to do the act of sex.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as men, I really invite us individually and collectively just to allow ourselves to open up a little bit, like just a little bit. I'm talking vulnerability here. I'm not talking external vulnerability yet. I'm talking internal vulnerability of
Yeah.
like, you might literally think you just want to fuck and you just want to
Yeah.
have sex. And when you're able to slow down and open up a little bit and look inside, a lot of times you want comfort and you want to feel good. Like you just want to feel good. You want comfort. You want to feel safety. And you think you get that through ejaculating, because when you ejaculate, what happens? You feel good. And so you think, oh, I just need sex because I want to feel
Yeah.
good. But you want to feel good because there's parts of you that are in pain. There's parts of you that are in pain, whether it's in your relationship or in your health or in your business. And it's that pain that you're resisting connecting with that has you go to alcohol or lots of sugar or lots of salt or lots of Netflix or lots of porn or lots of whatever. And so when you, like Patty's talking about here, the courage, find the parts of you that are actually in pain, communicate with that with your partner. Now, external vulnerability, hey, I'm actually in pain. And without blame, without making the other person wrong. Hey, well, you don't do this or you don't do this or you don't do this, so I'm in pain. It's just, no, I'm in pain and I deeply desire to be comforted. I deeply desire to be able to connect with you. And honestly, I forgot how. And how can we get supported?
So I have a slightly different spin. And I want to speak to this issue. I find that we don't talk enough about safety. We don't talk enough about what it takes to feel safe. And I think that many people avoid sex because it makes them feel unsafe, because it makes them feel vulnerable, and it makes them feel like I'm not doing it right. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't last long enough. I'm not big enough. All these stupid self-talk, self really negativizing messages that I hear from men in particular, but I hear women with other ones like body image issues. And I think that there is such a need to speak about what I need to feel safe with you. And first, I have to feel safe with me. I'm bringing it back to self one more time. And what makes for great sex is knowing what you want. If you don't know how your sexual engines roll, you can't really ask your partner or expect a mind reader or a body reader in your partner to know. You have to know, and then you got to find the courage, the juice to say, would you suck my, or could we kiss like with mouths open? Or maybe would you just hold me for a little longer? And I think that last kind of statement is the scariest of all for men in particular, because men aren't given this permission to say, I need this. I need to be held. I need to feel safe. I need to feel taken care of. I need you to make me, or let me, I don't like the word make. Let me feel desired. I hear this over and over and over again from all my clients. I don't feel desired by my partner or partners. And I think that that need to feel wanted, that need to feel desired and longed for, what in whatever form, is part of what keeps a relationship alive. Instead of going to Pornhub and swipe, 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 da, 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 da. Go in the other direction. Go toward. That's one of my messages today is go toward. Don't retreat. Don't shut down. When you feel scared, breathe through it. Full body breath and move toward partner. Don't retreat, because you both lose then. And life really can be a win-win.
And something I'd just like to share for the men and support women in understanding around a lot of men. and this shows up in different areas of life, and especially around sex. If you're not having sex and that's gone, so many men would rather live a life that's unfulfilled than to make mistakes. So we'd rather sit in our own suffering and our own hollowness rather than not being good at something or being bad at something or making mistakes. We'd rather be in the dissatisfaction of not being sexually fulfilled than to try it and fail and make mistakes and feel weak and feel not good and feel less than. And so, man, just
it's beautiful.
There's a quote by young Pueblo who says, as you're building up walls to protect yourself, just make sure you're not building a prison. And if you find yourself in this imprisonment of yourself, open up. And like Dr. Patty said, talk about it, explore, reach out to Dr. Patty and her team to learn some of these tips and strategies and processes for getting through your own blocks and your partner's blocks. So as a team, you can really come to everything that you want, because there is so much to experience in this life. There is so much that's available to you that you just either don't know about, or you haven't been shown, or you have different things to work through from your past, and you're worth it. You're worth it. It's worth it. And it's a choice, and you don't have to, like, you really get to.
I love that. Oh, you're such a healer. It's so beautiful to hear you speak as that voice for men's entitlement in a good way. Entitlement in a good way. We only hear about the bad entitlement and privilege, and we're all privileged to be fully realized sexual beings and sexual doers. And we need to know how, because we're not taught how. And we need to be fearless and fierce about embracing who we are and how we are, and learn how to set boundaries. I think that setting healthy boundaries for ourselves and our relationships is something that most people are so poor at. They have no skills whatsoever. And what I find among my clients, 100% of whom, by the way, my clients, because I'm the elder here, are referred by their psychotherapists who can't deal with the sex part because they don't have the training or the skill or the comfort to talk about sex. And that's my wheelhouse. That's what I talk about. And to me, that's part of the core of the center of ourselves is our sexuality. It's not an add-on. It's not just something we do on Saturday night. It's who we are. It's essential to our humanity, right? Yeah. And I find that boundary setting is so important. So what you just said is, like, everybody who's watching this, you can, within your own relationship, set up ground rules for how we talk. Like, you can say, if we go like that, one of us goes like that, we don't go there. That's how my relationship was before my partner died. We used to feel ourselves heading toward an impasse or a corner where we were trapped. This could be the one. We hardly fought at all, which made it even more scary when we did have a fight or a disagreement. And we would always say, don't go there, because we were conscious that we chose to be in this relationship. Every day when we woke up, it was, good morning, I'm so happy to see you, baby. And that was part of the ground rules of this relationship. And you can declare a shame-free zone in your relationship. You can say between 2 and 8 p.m., it is a shame-free zone. We can try anything and there's no shame allowed. Or this is a criticism-free zone. So all of these techniques can help all of you to know how do you navigate something as really as hard as relationship. Human relationships are not easy, especially when sex and sexuality and eroticism and all of that is a part of it. They're complex relationships. It's not just a slam dunk. And I want everybody watching and listening to have gorgeous, fulfilling, juicy, smorgasbord sex, not just a little shrimp for a snack.
Yes. And what I'm feeling in that energy is when you integrate a lot of this, you get your vitality back, just in life, in business, in passion, in friends, in going out. You have charisma, you have energy, you have this aura about you when that energy is flowing through your system. And just to keep it simple, Patty, some of the two main things that I'm really taking away from today is your sexual intimacy and growth and fulfillment starts with your sexual relationship with yourself, and learning a really good self-pleasure practice, which for guys isn't just, stroking your cock. It's learning to create pleasure throughout your entire body, honoring your entire body, getting familiar with what actually feels good. You're too focused on your cock since you were probably 12 years old. Get off the cock, get on the
Well, you were born that way. You were born penis first. And the body grew around that.
and so to like really learn pleasure in yourself, for men and for women, learn that self-pleasure practice, what feels good, allow that sexual energy to move through your body. And then the next thing that I was hearing from you is be able to talk about it, and not talk about it from blame or guilt or shame, but from vulnerability and the desire for connection and intimacy. And from that place, when two people are open, magic can now happen.
Yes. There's a great book called Great Sex by Michael Castleman. He just wrote another book called Sizzling Sex for a Life, and I wrote the foreword for that book. They're both available on Amazon, and they're really about making love to the whole body, making love to the whole person, whether it's with yourself and or with a partner. And that's really what you just said about male sex, solo sex in particular, that I feel it's interesting when I have men who are saying, my sex life sucks and my masturbation could be better, but I watch porn and then I knit it as fast as I can. I go, oh my God, you have the worst quality of masturbation. Well, let's amp up your masturbation quality first. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to hit my ear thing. And so they're like, what? It's okay that I masturbate? Well, A, yes. B, let's get it better. And so it's the foundation for how you relate to a partner. And if you have, lousy, narrow, really minimal pleasured sex with yourself, how are you going to amplify that with a partner? It's going to be very difficult. And I think that there also is just so much room for sex is play. When we're children, I'm not talking about child sexuality, but when we're children, we play. And when we're adults, guess where we get to play? Sexually. That's one of the joyful aspects of what sex is. It's adult play. So feel that. Just give yourself permission to feel that.
Patty, we could go on for hours and hours. There's so many offshoots and different topics.
I know.
And I think one thing to support the male audience, a lot of men don't know, we're talking about the chemicals, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, the adrenaline, everything. So many men, I would say in this day and age, with the phones in the hand and access to everything, the majority of men are living in an unconscious low level state. And what I mean, this isn't bad or this isn't derogatory. What I mean is, after you ejaculate, your chemical neurological body system is in like a repressive, lower energy type of state for 14 days. But you're jerking off every day and watching porn every day or every other day or every 3 days. Us as men, we're ejaculating a lot. And if you were to just try it out into not ejaculate for 14 days, you will experience a life that you haven't experienced for decades, or for however long you've been walking around with sunglasses on this entire time, or it's almost like a hangover. After you drink, you're in a hangover. You're in a hangover state after you ejaculate for 14 days, but we just exist in that as men and we don't even know we're in it. And there's something beyond that. And so
Let me add a different perspective
Mm,
before we end.
yeah.
Two things. One, studies have shown that particularly men over 40, as they age, because that's the pinnacle, and then men begin their decline sexually, they need ejaculation in order to clear the prostate, unless they have other techniques for clearing the prostate. Now, I have a colleague and a friend who is a medical doctor, and that's one of his specialties. And he
Mm,
believes that clearing the prostate is actually the key to anti-aging and health in every single way.
mm,
So that means prostate massage. It could be self prostate massage. It could be partner massage and or ejaculation, because cleaning out the pipes, that's what it's really about. And I also think that it's like, if you guys think about it like this, if you're constantly eating, you're never going to be hungry. So you have to take breaks from eating to have hunger. Sex is like that. If we don't have hunger, how are we ever going to feel that desire to either express our sexual energy with ourselves and especially with a partner, where that smorgasbord is available, not just the tasty little cocktail shrimp.
mm.
I have no idea why I'm in a shrimp mood today, but
And one other piece that came up that I want to share is that when it comes to men and dating, a lot of men will masturbate and ejaculate before a date if they think they're going to be having
no.
sex because they don't want to come too quick. Um, you
Hey,
just killed so much charisma, libido, creativity, connection. Um, I don't recommend that. There's other ways to go about creating the desired sexual experience without really depleting your energy before you get into knowing someone.
it also sends a message that I don't trust myself.
Mm,
So remember, it always starts with your relationship with yourself. If I am having to jerk off before I go on a date so I don't get a hard on or do something stupid, then I'm saying to myself, I don't trust myself. I'm not in control of me. And so that self regard, it's really self love. It's really trusting oneself is self love. That's really important so that somebody else can ride that wave of love with you.
Well, Dr. Patty, thank you so much for the work that you do, the vulnerability, authenticity, directness that you bring to a topic that is so globally suppressed that keeps us all
Yeah.
suppressed. So thank you for that power that you bring. And there's so much depth of love behind it that I feel and see and know through and through you. And
Thank you. Yeah,
as a
I
further,
really care. I really care. I care in particular about stopping this movement that men are bad, that men are out of control, this humanization. I want us to move to a harmony. I want us to move back to loving one another. We need much more of that in the world. And what were you going to say? I interrupted you.
no, it's perfectly fine. I was going to say, and in alignment of that love and giving that you are always doing, I believe you had something that you wanted to gift the viewers.
I do. I have an ebook for her pleasure, which is kind of a roadmap to pleasuring a female body
Mm,
and how to light her up and how to enjoy that process. So just jump on over to the website. You
mm,
can download that ebook PDF. And also, I want to give a shout out to anyone who would like to do this kind of work. This
mm,
is the training that I do in the world through sexcoachu.com. And this is my last enrollment coming up in February of 2022.
mm,
I'll be stepping down from leadership in June of 2023. And if you want to study the systems that I've created and be in kind of my what, I don't know what to say. You're always going to be in my pool with me, but to be directly with me for that journey, pop over to sexcoachu.com. This is the
mm.
last opportunity.
And that's sexcoachletteru.com, correct?
That's right. Letter U, just like Coach U.
Yeah.
I was inspired by Thomas Leonard a
Mm,
long time ago. I
mm,
followed him a long time ago.
mm,
So, yeah. And, the way that I work is I've married life coaching with clinical sexology. So it's a very holistic approach
Mm,
And I love training my students, and I only take very, very few clients
mm.
at this point. I've got 5 books to write and a documentary coming up. So got a few things to do.
And I'll be honest, I'm going to be downloading that ebook as well and learning that, because
Great.
what stood out for me and what you shared is not only how to light your woman up, turn her on, but how to enjoy the process of that as
Yes.
well. And that is so beautiful to integrate. It's not getting to the end or I have to, like, you get to
Yeah,
both enjoy the entire process together.
absolutely.
Wow.
It's all about joy and pleasure and fulfillment,
Mm.
which can come in so many various forms.
Yeah. Dr. Patty, thank you again so much. I look
Thank
forward to staying
you.
in touch and connecting.
That'd be great. Bye bye, everybody. Mwah.